Well, thank you all for attending today's seminar. We'll be covering achieving and maintaining ISO standards in manufacturing and laboratory operations. It is, a bit of a niche subject, but it is one that is, I think, very valuable and is very international as well. So I hope you guys enjoy our presentation and learn quite a bit. So there we go. So I will be one of your speakers today. My name is Nick Pittman. I'm a process engineer here at Pure Air Filtration. I've been working with Pure Air for a little over 2 years. I'm the ISO system quality manager, is I guess more so my title within the ISO process. Come from a mechanical engineering background and have shifted into this process engineering role, and have had quite a lot of hands-on work with the ISO process, and I'm excited to share that with you guys today.
Hello everyone, I am Mei Xin. I lead our lab ISO 17025 accreditation as a process owner, ensuring the quality, integrity, and the reliability of our laboratory operations. In parallel, I support technical evaluations and product development in filtration media and corrosion control, helping translate lab data into solutions our customers can trust. Thank you.
All right. Today's presentation will be going over some of the basics of ISO, timelines for building an ISO system and maintaining it as well. What happens after the certificate is established or after you're accredited, what it kind of means to be ISO certified, what it doesn't mean, kind of clearing up some misnomers with that, and then also why working with an ISO company matters. And then afterwards, we'll have some questions and answers and try to clear up any questions you guys have. So the basics of ISO. So I guess from the start, ISO is just an acronym used by the larger organization. It stands for International Organization of Standardization. Given that acronym doesn't quite match up with the letters ISO due to the ISO letters actually being in Greek, which is, in Latin, which is a little fun fact for you guys, but that is how it's known internationally. ISO 9001 is a very common ISO certification, over 1.2 million worldwide. It covers manufacturing, ensuring processes in manufacturing are regulated and reviewed, and follows their ISO system. On the laboratory end, the ISO 17025 is a little bit more unique. There's only about 3,200 accredited by A2LA in the United States. A2LA is one of the accreditation bodies. On our 9001 end, we're accredited by DECRA is the group. So, we go through these accreditation groups, and then they report to the organization of ISO as a whole. So the lab one is a bit more of a unique one, and one that you don't see really all too often, but for major laboratories, it's something you'll find. So I guess we'll have some polls going throughout. So we've come across our first one. So what is your experience with ISO certification and accreditation? Let's try to get some people. Okay, so we got someone who worked with a ISO company. Very nice. Kind of getting some reports rolled in. All right. So people looking to become ISO certified. Very nice. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate everyone responding to the polls. Just trying to keep it a little bit interactive. So we got some people who have experienced it, some people who know of it and want to become ISO certified. So hopefully throughout this presentation, you'll get a better understanding of it and hopefully help you along with both ends. So the basics of ISO 9001. So the 9001 system is the first system we were accredited with, covering manufacturing as a whole. So it is a quality management system, is how they define it. So on our end, it covers designing, building our systems, as well as documentation and improvement overall. So the ISO system, or ISO as a whole, one of their big pushes is documentation and improvement, ensuring that products are reliably manufactured and given to the customer, as specified, as they're designed to be. And then if there are issues, that those issues are documented, that they are the root cause analysis are performed, and that they're reviewed for any way we can improve on our processes in the future. So, and then for the basics of ISO 17025.
Okay, so the ISO 17025 applied to our lab accreditation. This is a global standard for testing and calibration laboratories. And pure air filtration is accredited by A2LA, just mentioned by Nick earlier. And A2LA is a recognized authority for lab accreditation. So basically, there are several procedures in the lab covered by this ISO standard. First is the handle, how you properly handle sample handling and documentation. And everything you receive in the lab, you have to record it properly following SOP. And also you have to keep documentation for certain years. And for testing is performing tests according to standard procedure, including how you handle sample, how you record your data, and how you report it, and how you respond to customer feedback. And all the tests, the SOP standard procedures and data are verified and confirming accuracy and reliability of results. When we report the data, we have to document the results in a consistent and traceable manner. So everything, if you present a report to a customer, you have to explain how you tested and what procedure you use and what kind of like a certified relevance, like a controlled reference material you use, and everything is traceable. So Lab ISO 17025 is more than a quality certification. It is a benchmark for technical competence. It ensures that the data we generated is not only accurate, but scientifically defensible. The standard emphasizes method validation and measurement uncertainty and full traceability. So this is especially critical when evaluating filtration media performance and corrosion behavior applied to our product marketing area. And also this method standard allows us to produce consistent and repeatable results that customers can rely on.
I guess one thing to note, the accreditation does not apply to all laboratory activities or testing, only the ones that are approved within the defined scope, which is, I guess, is a big part of ISO. So not every part of a company will necessarily be ISO certified, given, it's how you keep finances. Well, ISO doesn't necessarily need to be in there making sure of that. Is more so that we're following standards for testing, as Dr. May explained, or for building or for designing, really anything that would benefit the customer in terms of product or service. And so once that is defined in our scope, your scope on your certificate, that is what is, I guess, held to the ISO standard. Moving on to achieving the ISO timeline. So this is a big part in terms of becoming ISO certified. They can kind of roughly be broken down into 4 parts for this. The first one is, I would say, the biggest step, making the decision of becoming ISO certified, whether it's the right move for your company, if you believe it would help, if it's worth it for you. The second one, building the system. In phase 2, it's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of documentation, making sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted with documents. Phase 3 is putting your system into place, working it into your company, as well as performing internal audits, making sure that what you have documented is actually what is being performed within the company, process-wise or documentation-wise. And phase 4, if you do phase 2 and 3 well and you sorted it all out, you'll reach phase 4 where you actually achieve your certification. And then from then, it's continuing the ISO system in terms of maintaining it, making sure everything is followed, and hopefully keeping it for a long, long time. So so the first one is the phase 1, making a decision. One of the biggest decision is, why does your company want to get ISO certified? For ISO 9001, our manufacturing one of the big pushes for getting it on a manufacturing end is for customers. It gives the customer a sense of reliability within the company in the sense that if there is an issue, we are required through ISO standards to log the issue, find a reason for the failure or for the non-conformance, and take steps in order to rectify the issue as well as try to prevent it in future cases. Another is, that the ISO requires documentation in place that the product you receive is held to a certain level of consistency and reliability, between making sure that all the documents are in order, they are controlled within our company, that everyone is looking at the same thing. It provides that consistency that is sought after by many. Another big part of making the decision is the leadership commitment, because it's while I do oversee the process, I don't run the system alone. ISO is a full company commitment. It's a full cultural shift that is really needed to ensure that everyone is following the game plan, everyone is following their documents and procedures as listed, that issues are reported, and that everyone is looking for future improvements. How can the system be improved on and make it better for not only ourselves as a company, but make it better for the customer as well. Another one is the resources and time expectation. The ISO system, while it would be nice to get accredited, you have your certificate, and then just step back and you're done. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There is a lot that goes into it in terms of data collection, making sure that your KPIs are up to date, so your objective goals as a company and as the ISO program are being followed, being tracked and measured, as well as ensuring that if changes do occur, they are tracked, they are implemented across the company. So kind of taking that into account, seeing if you think it is worth it for your company, and if you can kind of work that into the workload that you currently have going for you. I did mention that 9001, it was more for the customer end of helps you get a bit more customers that way. Some do require it. On our lab end, it was nice so we could give customers reassurance that our testing was valid. We have been testing media for quite some time, and we know it's great. We know that we're doing everything in our power and it's accurate, and we had everything in place. So we said, well, we might as well give the customers that reassurance that it is. So for the lab ISO, it wasn't as much of an undertaking in terms of getting all these documents in place. We already had them. We just had to do the legwork in terms of making sure that they're controlled, making sure that we have they're meeting the ISO standards, and it gives not only us but the customer that reassurance that when we test something, we are doing it correctly, and that it is a result that can be tracked and trusted. So for the second phase of building the system, I mentioned this is kind of where some of the legwork comes in. This is where you're mapping your real processes, creating documentation that reflects reality, defining responsibilities and controls, and training your team. So when you're building your system, you're not necessarily restructuring your organization as a whole. What you are wanting to do is to see how your company operates. You don't want to change how you're manufacturing your product. You just want to be sure that you are documenting the exact process and what is needed in order to manufacture your product, or I guess in the lab's case, how testing is performed. And having that documented, having that controlled, having it so that if we were to hire a new person on our manufacturing floor, or Dr. May would be getting a new lab technician, that person could come into the company, look over our documents, and be able to fit in perfectly. Just know exactly how it's done, and not kind of have it be just learning through trial and error or anything of the sort. So this building the system side of it is a lot of just making sure your documents are in order. It can get a little bit cumbersome. It can get a little bit confusing, but once those are in place, you have them stored correctly, you have them sorted. It allows for the operation just to run a whole lot more smoothly. The third phase of it is the implementation and internal audits. So running the system before the audit, identifying gaps internally, and then from those audits that you perform, at some point you're bound to find some sort of issue, some sort of thing where someone might be doing it a slightly different way. And while that can be okay, it depends on how you document it. There are times where you want something to be done a very specific way just to ensure that there's no errors, whether that's doesn't necessarily need to be as detailed as taking a screwdriver with your right hand and screwing a bolt, but could be if you wanted to. But I guess like in the lab's case, it would be maybe how chemicals are poured might be an important factor. So if that gap is identified, corrective action might have to go into place. And these corrective actions are where we start to tighten up your system, start to close these gaps that are found, and ensure that the task is being performed, as needed to ensure that the product is conforming, that it reaches a certain level of quality, or that it reaches the testing standards. Another part of this too, the internal audit, is while you're ensuring that your process is right on your end and going smoothly inside, you're also getting the team ready for an external review. So once you get everything together and ready to go, before you get your accreditation, you will have to be reviewed by the accreditation body that is ultimately the one that gives you the certificate and allows you to be ISO certified. Oh, we have another audience poll. So this one is, what is your reaction when someone says ISO audit? Panic, that's a lot of people. Neutral, bring it on. I think I've said that before, but what is an audit is when I first did it. So we got a wide variety of responses on this one. So, not really a wrong answer. They're all pretty, I guess it depends what position you're in for the audit. But, all right, so we have quite the spread, with the neutral being the most common. I must say neutral, I think, is probably the best. That and ready, bring it on is probably the best mindset to have going into the audits. Even my first audit, I was definitely a bit panicked. You're experiencing something new with the audits. They're a bit like a test from college, where you study, you can have everything in place, but you're never quite sure what's going to actually be covered on that test. You don't know exactly the rabbit holes they're going to go down. So it's best to make sure everything is good. You've reviewed all your materials, everything is in place. But so the hope is when you're going into your ISO audit that you aren't panicked and you're beyond prepared. So takes us to our fourth phase, which is the certification audit. So the certification audit is the last and big step in terms of getting the initial accreditation. This is when the auditors will come in from that third body and take a look at your overall system. They don't just look at, how you design things or how you test one process. They'll take a look at your entire ISO system or your entire quality management system and just make sure that all the pieces are in place. Make sure that it adheres to the standards that are set so that it follows their guidelines and they can safely give you their stamp of approval. Some of the differences between the two, I've done one of the lab audits, external audits, and a few of the manufacturing ones. The difference between the two really is they're similar in aspects such as document control is a big one. Making sure that procedures are have a set location, that not anybody can just go into them and change them how they feel. Making sure that roles and responsibilities are defined. Ensuring that management meetings are held and documented, non-conformances are documented and handled, as well as audits and corrective actions are held and documented. Those are the similarities between the two. After that, the differences really are due to the nature of what each group does. So on the lab side, they're checking the validity of their test, ensuring that it does follow the scientific process or it follows the set procedure that is defined by Dr. Mei or by the group who writes the procedures. Also ensuring that there's a link of traceability to the SI standard. Just one of the big things is ensuring that it can be tracked, that you could take an end result from the end of your ISO process and you'll be able to track it throughout the company. You say, oh, here's where it went through each step along the way. It's kind of the big thing between the two. So they are very similar in some of those senses, but because of the material in each, they do differ. Some of the common findings and challenges with this, I think some of the common findings are kind of meeting minutes, I think are common ones that are discussed amongst auditors. Document control is one that tends to be found commonplace just due to whether company changes how things are handled. Maybe you have a new way of processing items. Just ensuring that those are controlled is kind of some of the things that are found. Yes, I'm trying to think of other ones. We've done fairly well in our past two. Actually, we've done pretty well in our past two manufacturing audits with no findings, which was really good work from our guys, just the company overall. It's a team effort. And the lab one was our certification audit. So, the lab had everything definitely in place since then. So I'll have to, after our next audit, I'll have to come back to you guys and let you know if there's any new challenges. But how organizations respond to nonconformances is also a big one, part of the certification audit. During each audit, you're almost bound to you're almost bound to receive a nonconformance during the audit. There are minor and major ones. Major ones being they found a large gap in the process, something that seriously broke down, something that is a bigger issue overall, and may affect the quality of a product or quality of the output. These require more immediate attention by the certification body, doing a corrective action, tracking it, making sure that implementations hold and they work, and then the issue is solved and hopefully prevented from happening in the future. And then there's also minor ones, which are very common and are bound to happen almost every audit, where it could be as small as, someone wasn't putting their initials on, let me think, inspection form. You could have an inspection form with 4 guys and one guy doesn't initial his name. Well, that could technically be a nonconformance and a finding. It really depends on who's auditing you. It depends on, if they find one, that might not be an issue. Well, if they find three, it could be a bigger issue. So non-conformances really spanned between minor and major, but either way, they're both handled similarly, where they're tracked, a corrective action is made, and your task from there is kind of saying, we found an issue, how can we prevent it in the future? So it's once you get past the phase 4, it is a huge weight off your shoulders. I'm sure Dr. May can attest to that. We worked hard during the lab one, and it's a great feeling. Unfortunately, it is not necessarily the end of the process. So you have the business after certification. Just because you received your ISO certification doesn't mean you're done. Now you just know that your process has all the key parts it needs, and it is, it meets the standards set by the organization. Now your task is to ensure that you continue to perform. You continue to make sure documents are up to date, make sure that processes are being followed, ensure that any issues that come up are tracked. So this could be done through surveillance audits. Yearly, we'll have an audit with the external body, for example. So aside from our yearly internal audits, the external body will come, make sure that we're doing what we've been saying we're doing. Come check us out. Another thing is ongoing improvements. One of the big pushes by ISO is ongoing improvements. No company, I would say, is exactly perfect as they are. There's always some way it can be worked on. Processes could be improved. New technology comes out, that always improves things. So it's one of the big pushes is, finding gaps, finding where improvements could be made and kind of implementing them. Increased training, a big part with those improvements, and with, a non-conformance is bound to happen. Don't think I can name a company that, has never had an issue. So when those issues happen, are people being trained? Is the training applicable or effective? Document emphasis, so ensuring that everything is documented, throughout the process. So kind of continuously bringing these and ensuring that these are being tracked, that these are being addressed and discussed within management is a big part of maintaining the ISO certification. Some of the notes to keep in mind. Don't treat it like a milestone. It's not just something to say you have and to forget about. Something always to work on and to grow. Let operations outgrow documentation. That's definitely something that can happen where you get your certification, you don't pay attention too much, you start to look at other things, and next thing you know, there's new processes in place. Maybe you're making new product and you don't have set work instructions, or you don't have set processes for those. So more laboratory specific ones. Not changing your testing method freely. That's a big one. You got to make sure that what you say you're going to do and how you're going to do it is how it's done, and must stay within the approved scope. So on the ISO certificates, there's a scope listed, and making sure that those tasks within the scope are being followed correctly and is documented. And you're not necessarily stamping your ISO on just anything. Next one is what ISO really means. So kind of overview, its systems are defined and follows, kind of bringing up that procedures, the controlled documents, making sure that it is being handled and done as we say it is. Data and decision are traceable. Managing KPIs, collecting data from manufacturing aspect in terms of either issues found or even how whatever your company goals are. One of our, for example, is on-time delivery. So ensuring it's tracked, and if there are issues, handling them in time and seeing that data is a very important part that ISO requires. Um, Results are technically valid. So on the lab end, a big one, ensuring that what they say is done is correct, and having the ISO stamp does give that level of certainty behind it, but also having the documents and having the traceability to prove that. So traceability being a big one of, it's the chemicals used during the testing is tracked. You can track it all the way to the source of the international standard, ensuring that it is what it says it is, and consistency across people and processes. You'd hate if you got one guy on your right, one guy on your left, and while you're all supposed to be doing the same task, if it wasn't defined, if the process isn't defined, they could be doing two separate things. So having the defined documents controlled and trained ensures that everyone is following along, to the same standard and the same way. What it does not mean, it's a big one. No mistakes ever occur. It's as nice as that would be. We are human. These are. It's a very human process, and something is bound to happen sooner or later. So what ISO does cover, though, is when a mistake does occur, it will be tracked. It will be rectified, and steps will be taken to try to mitigate future instances of that. Faster turnaround time. That would be nice. And while having an ISO program may help you improve that, it is not an instant thing. It forces you to take data and to track a lot of metrics. So, it could be a side effect of tracking all these metrics is improved times, but just having it doesn't mean that things are going to go faster. It is how you set it to be. So if anything, it would probably stay the same as it was before, and then slow process. Audits are easy, technically. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that the audits are any easier. What it does mean is if you were to audit, you're held to a higher standard in the audits. There's a lot more it covers, a lot more you have to ensure is in place. Yeah, I can tell you firsthand, it definitely doesn't make audits any easier. And then finally, the system runs itself. The ISO process is very dependent on management and on everyone in the company doing their part. The system is the people, is the company itself, and because of that, it can't just take care of itself. You have to make sure that things are running smoothly, that processes are being followed through internal audits and just your checks overall. So as nice as that would be, it will not run itself. We have another audience poll, maybe our final one. So how important is working with a ISO certified company when you're selecting a manufacturer? Get some results. All right. Very important, not applicable. Okay, so we got a split between some of them. All right, well, got a good bit for very important, some for just important, some not applicable, which is understandable. I will say for the not applicable, while it may not be applicable for you currently, ISO 9001 and 17025 aren't the only standards. There's practically a standard for everything under the sun. It is, I wish I could tell you all of them, but would be here all day. It may not be the most important to you for everything, which is totally fair, but I will say, it's nice to kind of look and see which companies are and which aren't. And, it might be a kind of just some reassurance in whatever field they are. certified in. So I guess when it does matter to some. So when decisions rely on trusted results, a big part of ISO is ensuring traceability in terms of testing, whether that is for manufacturing testing for measurements. With our company, we do airflow readings. I guess trying to think of all the tools we use. We use anemometers for airflow, tachometers for RPM testing, sound level testing, a little bit of that. I'm trying to think of what else off the top of my head. Some voltage stuff. Ensuring that the numbers we provide are accurate in that sense. The ISO certificate kind of shows that we are held to a standard that is one thing they always check, making sure our tools are calibrated and are traceable to a certain standard. Same thing with the lab. So with the lab, it's decisions on replacing media, media life analysis conducted and accredited by A2LA. It's testing process with reputable results is what is delivered. So so it's having those testings is always nice with the ISO. When failure has real consequences, like I said, it won't say that there's no issues ever, but with the ISO system, you'll know that it is looked at a lot stricter, in terms of quality. It is the documentation for final inspections for pretty much almost every step along the way. There's some sort of inspection that is had. And if, hopefully not, but if some issue does occur, that is always reported. It is always handled as soon as possible. And then steps are documented, are taken, and are tracked to ensure that the problem doesn't happen in the future. If I guess with a non-accredited group, an issue could happen and it could be fixed, but you're never sure if in the future if they even fixed, I guess, the underlying issue, if the root cause was ever determined. With the ISO process or ISO certification, we're required by their standards, and that is something that they strictly look at. They look over it with a fine-tooth comb. So, long-term performance matters. So that, inspections, of course, and having just a log of when anything occurs that, preventative actions are taken. Similar with establishing long-term relationships. If something were to happen when you guys first are working together, I guess with some certainty, you'll know that it shouldn't happen during the course of your long relationship with the company. It's, if the issue is found once, we're going to work to make sure it never happens again. When accountability matters, when stuff happens, we have extensive documentation that is mandatory to take to, hold ourselves accountable and to ensure that we take the steps required to make sure that the issue is fixed and hopefully it doesn't happen in the future. How to think about ISO moving forward. So pursuing ISO, it's a operational commitment. It is not a project. So as we mentioned before, it's not you got it and you're done. It's almost a lifestyle. It's a way to just always kind of be thinking, to be running a company, considering risks within manufacturing process, improvements overall. How can you make your overall system better to be able to provide a better product or service to your customers? When evaluating customers, ask what is actually covered in their scope. So for our testing on our lab side is a big one. We're certified in quite a number of testing for various products. That doesn't necessarily mean you can ship anything to us and we can tell you with certainty results. But Dr. Mei has worked hard to ensure it covers quite a large variety of, especially of media, being our specialty. So How is it maintained is a big one with the ISO, and then what systems support it. So, you can run an ISO system through pen and paper, and while it's doable, it's a lot more effective when improvements are constantly made to the customer. When the company is always looking technologically, how can they kind of improve kind of the support of ISO, and in turn the support of the company as a whole. So, and then the Pure's certification and accreditation. So on the left or on the right side, I'll go over the 9001. We are 9001 certified, and that's when you see the 9001 2015, that is the 2015 standard. Actually, next year they'll be coming out the new standard, so we will be in time accredited to that standard. But our scope is design, manufacture, and distribution of commercial and industrial air purification systems and related products. So when you see that, when it comes to industrial air purification and commercial use air purification, we are ISO certified. If you ask us to build a swimming pool, we could not ISO certify it. It's very much, the ISO stamp isn't terribly broad. It's just because you have it for one thing doesn't mean you have it for everything you do. And then on the lab end, Dr. May will talk about a bit.
Okay, so our lab received A2LA accredited ISO 17025 last year in July 2025. And as Nick mentioned, we do a scope of testing, right? So, but it does apply to different customer samples and different manufacturing samples, not only our own product. So we normally, when we receive the sample, we'll go over all the procedure to make sure we understand the customer needs, and we will allocate the sample to the right method and follow ISO procedure to test it. And when you see a lab with a lab ISO 17025 accredited, it means confidence in data accuracy and integrity, and it's independent and objective verification of performance. And this certificate also reduces the risk in decision making and acceptance of results across industries and regions, and also give greater transparency and trust. So for our customers, this ISO 17025 translates directly into confidence and reduce the risk. It means our performance data used to select filtration media or design system for corrosion control is reliable and unbiased. Customers can compare different material solutions on a consistent and scientifically sound basis. So this is particularly valuable in applications like gas filtration, purification, and corrosion control. So in the end, it strengthens trust and supports better long-term decisions. And also, I have to say, this application process actually help us as a company lab grows a lot. So there are a lot of things we have to report, follow the procedures, and so it helps our internal improvement for data collection and also reporting side. We noticed after almost almost less than a year, 10 months, within the program, we noticed much less customer complaint, and we have improved a lot, accuracy and reduced uncertainty in our reporting. So back to Nick.
Yeah, Dr. May brings up a great point of, ISO standards pretty much force you to, keeping those records and then doing the internal audits, ensuring that things are on the up and up. It improves, it kind of helps processes overall, kind of forces you to make sure you keep a watchful eye on things, or that you are tracking most of the things going through. With our lab in particular, the ISO certification kind of allows you to think of our lab less of just, a pure air lab where we're testing our own stuff. It's, you can think of it almost as it's its own individual lab. It forces them to follow very strict data collection, as Dr. Mei mentioned, with data entry. You can follow the paperwork throughout the entire process, and forces that integrity as well. Making sure that data is not fudged; it is truly as it is. So it's kind of creates the atmosphere and just the makes its own cell where it's they put out good results. So all right, and then I think that is kind of bringing us to the end of our lecture. You guys are more than free to contact me at any time. My name is Nick Pittman again. My email's here on the screen, as well as my extension. I'd be happy to discuss ISO with you, provide you any information you would like to know. Dr. Mei's info is here as well. I'm sure she would be pleased to talk to people about ISO within the lab, and help answer any lab questions about the testing process or testing results with that. So I appreciate everybody coming today.